Welcome to the Republican Professor. Today, we're backing up LJM Facebook, and we have the week of the lockdown, 2020 March. We did um, we did one on what I saw in LA, which was the Friday, the 13th, the week before the lockdown. Then we had the one from that Sunday, the first Sunday our church was shut down. And now we're doing one from that Wednesday, March 18th, 2020, 7:53 p.m. This is a neglected aspect of civil rights related to the present crisis, liberty of contract, or the right to earn a living free from arbitrary government constraint, even if that constraint is under the guise of public health. Um, we covered this on the Republican Professor this past year. So this is 22 October 2024 today that I'm backing this up. But March 18th, 2020, I went live on this topic, and we have we had a good reflection on what was happening at the time, which is government shutting down businesses, hurting people, abusing their liberty of contract, the right to earn a living in the name of public health. And it's really sad. It's really sad what happened. So we're gonna document this recording and have it for posterity.
Coming at you live. How's everybody doing? Got a top
Okay, I'm gonna make sure that we have the
coming at you live. How's everybody doing? Got a topic here in a neglected aspect of civil rights history that we're going to not neglect tonight. And it is related to what is going on right now in my town and probably many other towns across the country. And that is the issue of how powerful the government is. This is all what all rights issues have in common. How powerful is the government to do certain things? There are certain businesses that are locked down right now because they're considered non-essential services or businesses. What I want you guys to think about is the politics of this. So I'll tell you what I saw today. I went to a coffee shop and they had takeout and they had to-go muffins and they had and I wanted to support this guy. I know this guy is a friend of mine, and so I have no problem supporting his coffee shop. It's right down the street from a cigar lounge, which was closed. That's not an essential service, right? Cigars and alcohol, I guess, are not essential. Okay. Across the street is my favorite bookstore. It's a used books to mom and pop's store. They've already been put out of business once when their rent was raised. They moved towns, they moved locations, and it's called Half Off Books, and they're closed by order of Orange County Public Health or something. So we're picking winners and losers here with businesses, who can stay open, who can not stay open, do you think that the margins are really good in used books? Do you think that that's, those people are just raking it in and they have a reserve of 6 to 18 months? These people are barely hanging on. And not unlike the coffee shop. I mean, the margins on that are not great either. But when you say that coffee to go is essential, but not a book dealer which could be giving you a book to read when you're not working, or your kids a book to read when they're not in the physical building of the school. Does that sound a little strange to you? Um, the difference is that the person giving me coffee or the muffin is handling food. The person that runs the bookstore is not handling food. I know this sounds really scientific, but you know, they're books, you know, they're used DVDs, stuff like that, stuff you could easily sanitize or whatever. And so those people will probably go out of business because of the fear and the panic of the flu. Never seen this before in Orange County. I think it might be unprecedented, actually. Although there is a history, and here, this is what I want you to catch here. There is a history here. I want to talk about a Supreme Court case from 1905. Anybody who's been to law school probably knows that they're supposed to hate this Supreme Court case, even if they never read it very carefully. But it's called Lochner versus New York. And the issue there was that the legislature passed a law that disproportionately affected family-run bakeries. What it did was it set hours, maximum hours that could be worked for baking bakeries, basically. And this is before I think most of the big bakeries really got off the ground, like Wonder Bread, and you think of that, and you think of Hostess and stuff like that. I don't think they were really up and running to the extent that they are now, obviously. Most bakeries were mom and pop shops, and they were typically immigrants, by the way, in New York City. This is in New York. And so the goody goody two shoe people that typically get elected to legislatures and make these kind of decisions, these kind of health decisions. This was a this was under the guise of protecting public health. They passed a law that favored the big corporations because the big corporations could, just make personnel changes. But mom and pop shops. So the law, I think, said that bakeries are forbidden in any case to work more than 10 hours a day or 60 hours a week. I think it was or. So 10 hours a day or 60 hours a week. So in other words, this law empowered the government to come in there and snoop around and poke its nose into some of these mom and pop shops, which, typically baker would work over 12 hours a day. And they live above the bakery. And so they go take a nap when they need to or whatever, and they got their sun covering or whatever. And that's just what immigrants did to live, and they chose to do that because they know how to do that, and that's how they could make a living. And it's better doing that and living than not, right? And there was some labor pressure from the bigger corporations to limit the hours worked. And so there was a political issue here, like big labor was developing, and big corporations saw a chance to maybe put the smaller operations out of business. And next thing you know, there's in the name of public health, right? Sounds familiar to what we're talking about here, which is the government typically has or takes itself to have enormous power when it comes to protecting health. And so this is very difficult to fight legally, almost impossible to fight legally. Um, the way you fight it is politically, I think, and I'll get to that in a second. This is really about politics, but I have to get to the legal issue because Lochner versus New York was a lawsuit. So some of these mom and pop people, they got together and they sued New York, and they went all the way to the Supreme Court, and they won. I'm going to show you a book that I read a long time ago, and I've been thinking about since this whole thing started. And that is a book called Rehabilitating Lochner, Defending Individual Rights Against Progressive Reform. And a fantastic book. Um, there's Chief Justice Rufus Peckham, who is taking out Associate Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr. He wrote the opinion in the case, and he wrote the dissent. And you got the bakers in the background, and so on and so forth. So that's what that cover means. It was a 5-4 decision. The bakers won. The little mom and pop people won against all odds. They took on the state of New York and they won. They took on the big corporations and they won. Now, I have to say this because you guys all know I'm a Republican, right? Say yes. Okay, you're nodding. Good. I People are so ignorant about history here that they don't know that I'm about to give some Democrats a compliment. Okay. So you heard it here. This guy was a Democrat, and I think he had the right answer. This guy was a Republican. I think he had the wrong answer in that case. Now, there were Republicans on his side as well, but um, I think that the Democrat got the right answer on this. I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's another guy named Harlan that wrote a dissent, and I think his dissent, it's close. I would say it's close, but I went to that bookstore and I saw the closure today, and I just felt so bad for these people because I know them. I mean, I don't know them really that well. I mean, I've been talking to them. I chat people up when I'm buying books or buying stuff. And I remember when they were at the other location in Whittier, and then the rent went up, and then they finally came out of Fullerton. And um, I came in one day, and they had a picture of her son on the wall, who normally works there, often works the register. And I said, I haven't seen your son in a while. I was pointing to the picture, and she said, yeah, he died in a car accident, and that was last year, I think. So they just been devastated by the loss of their son. It's a family run business, and now the county is putting them basically out of business because they're not essential. I'm doing you guys a favor by staying away from the gun stuff today, but I'll sneak in. Maybe I know a lot of you guys are gun guys, but I'll sneak in a little bit. I was thinking about the gun stores. Like, are you going to try to shut them down for public health? Is that essential? Notice that's a political question. Is ammunition essential? Why is that a political question? Because what do you think Democrats are going to say? I mean, they don't even want ammunition stores ever, you know? In California, it's convoluted. I won't take up too much time on this, but in California, I complain about this all the time. There's a 10-day waiting period, and I've either driven by or been inside at least a half dozen to a dozen gun stores in the last week. I'm really paying attention to this. I'm interested in this. I'm talking to people. I'm keyed into this issue. And I'll just tell you what I saw at a gun store in Corona the other day. I saw um, a bunch of people in this teeny mom and pop gun shop, and I would say about half of them were trying to buy a gun for the first time. The looks on by the way, all minorities. It's run by a Chinese couple, and there were some Chinese people that came in. They were speaking Chinese, and there was a bunch of Hispanics in there that came in there, And the looks on their faces when they found out that they had to, just FYI, I have a background in Chinese, so I was able to understand. So, um, the looks on their faces when uh, they were told that they had to take a test to buy a gun, and then that was the only the first step. They had to take a test, and then they had to do a background check, and then they couldn't have the gun even if they passed the background check. Why? Fascinating question. In most of the other states, over 40 other states, you take it home the same day if you pass the background check. But not here. We don't fully trust you. We hold on to it for 10 days so that you have a cooling off. Okay, so these people are like, I don't know what their situation is, but they're concerned about something. I don't know if it's something they saw or their neighbor or whatever. I don't know what it is. Everybody's got a different situation. But in their judgment, and they have a constitutional right to buy a gun, in their judgment, they need a gun and they need it now, not in 10 days. They need it now. So this guy's taking this test, and he's just so stressed out because he has to wait. And now there's background checks for ammo. I mean, it used to be you just buy ammo. You want that box of ammo, you buy it. Now, if you want just one box of ammo, you have to do a background check. If you walk out the door and you say, "Oh, I want a second box," you have to do another background check. I mean, it's so ridiculous. By the way, you do a background check, it's instantaneous. You pass background check, you take the ammo, you leave. There's no 10-day waiting period. That's why everybody knows that the gun thing is a BS, right? Because it's instantaneous, the background check. I mean, it's instantaneous everywhere else. In Arizona, I bought a gun in Colorado uh, many years ago, many moon ago. That was gosh, that was 20 years ago. That was right before Y2K. And I bought a gun at Green Mountain Guns. And there was a background check and I passed it. Shocker. I was still shocked. Oh, you what? No. Do you have the right thumbprint? And it was instantaneous. The question of whether it's essential is a political question. That's what I'm getting at. That's what I'm getting at. And you might think, well, what's it? Why is it? Is it Democrat versus Republican? Well, that's not what I mean by political. I mean, there's a power issue here with different people in different camps. Really, what the response needs to be is not like a legal response like you had here. This was a legal response where the bakers got together and they sued and they found a champion of their individual right to liberty of contract in Rufus Peckham, who was the guy that wrote the opinion for the majority. And a progressive like Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr. was poo-pooing and saying basically all of uh, the progressive legislature can do whatever the hell they want to businesses. They can run people out of business. It doesn't matter. They can if they think it you know, public health, okay. And then they ruin people's lives. So um I think the response today is to recognize the question is, does the government have a right to run you out of business just because they're afraid? I mean, why not let people allow them the choice to come in and buy a book, take whatever precautions they need. If you have to stand by the door and only let 5 people in at a time, that's what they're doing at Trader Joe's. And Trader Joe's handles food, for God's sake. They're touching the apples, which you put in your mouth. How many of you guys have ever put a novel in your mouth when you walk out of the bookstore? I'm just talking about, but I mean, guys, come on now. Come on. So these businesses have to, I don't think they think this way, but they really need to think this way. They need to think in terms of organizing and putting political pressure on the people that are making the decisions. And I think that that's probably what's not happening. But I mean, I'm not a small business owner here. We do have a small business in Newport Beach, but we are in the exemption. I mean, we're covered under essential services, basically. I don't want to say too much about that, but but it's my wife's business. And so she can be open for business. But my heart is with these other people that have businesses and they're barely making it. And, they're not places where a bunch of people can gather. My wife stood in line at Trader Joe's, and it took about 5 minutes outside. People were in line outside, and they let a little bit in at a time and allowed people to restock the shelves. They did a great job there. They've been doing that at Costco. Why can't you do that with a bookstore? Why can't you do that with some of these other stores that sell other things like paint or hobby stuff? Is Hobby Lobby an essential thing? Why is Chick-fil-A essential but not Hobby Lobby? You know, I mean, think about it. You got your kids. Wouldn't it be smart to have them do stuff? It wouldn't be that hard to keep some of these places open. And what I want people to see is it's a political issue. You have to fight back. And I'm not talking about suing. Dude, if you sue, this, we're not going to have Lochner Part 2 here anytime soon because Lochner, you're taught to hate Lochner in law school. You're taught that it's a bad decision, and you don't really read it carefully, probably. Um, and I don't think that suing is the right way. I mean, the government has enormous legal power to do this. You have to put political pressure. So here, I'm just going to say this. I think the new civil disobedience is opening your business to the public. And when they try to fine you, you fight that in court. You could fight that in court. But I think that I think it'd be better just to put enormous political pressure on people for shutting down some businesses rather than others. And, you know, arbitrarily saying what is essential and what is not essential. Speaking of essential, good resource on Supreme Court decisions, essential Supreme Court decisions. I think this is a decent book. Um, you know, not too long. Roman and Littlefield. I spent a lot of time in this. I also recommend this, and I apologize ahead of time for the horrible condition this book is in, but it came in the mail this way. But the title of the book is called The Rise of Modern Judicial Review. Fantastic book if you're interested in the Supreme Court. From Constitutional Interpretation to Judge-Made Law by Christopher Wolfe. And I really highly recommend this book. Lots of really good stuff on the history of judicial review, the history of types of cases that have come up, give you an idea of what's in there. Oh, there's the Lochner decision right here. Right here. Um, so I think it was 1994, so it doesn't go up too far. But and then, this is a good book if you're interested in the history of liberty of contract. I have another book called Liberty of Contract I really should show you, but I don't have it available. I'm going to look for it. It might be in my other library. I don't see it obviously here, so it's around. think it's in my other library. I have multiple libraries. I think we need a political response to this virus. You got to keep the economy going. Look, there is a clash that is unavoidable here. Here's the clash. Some people are going to die with this virus. Some people are going to get sick. And the response could be worse than the virus, meaning the panic could put people out of work and destroy their economic livelihood, which is an enormous cost of the virus. That what are we doing for precautions against that? And it, by the way, it might be totally pointless to put these people out of work when they could do the same as the so-called essential services. You know, does that make sense to you? And I'm just using that bookstore as an example, but fill in the bookstore, paint, hardware store might be essential. I don't know, but how do you decide, what's essential and what's not essential? I mean, you could avoid big crowds. There's certain ways you could do it. You could sanitize things. Uh, Seems to me if you could make Trader Joe's sanitary, and you know what it's like to go through a checkout line at a grocery store. You know what it's like to pick out apples. That's still happening. So why can't I buy a novel again? A used novel? You have to understand that's a cost that's happening right in front of your eyes. We're talking about maybe saving people's lives in the future with the flu. That's a cost that's actually happening right now. People's livelihoods. And you have to ask the question, do you have a right to make a living? Yes or no? Does the government have a right to come in and say you do not have a right to make a living right now because we're afraid of this virus? But over there, that guy does have a right to make a living because he's essential. Let's say you run a gun shop and, oh, you are in the middle of your 10-day wait and they shut the gun shop down. You get a little piece of paper. And maybe I'll show you one. Maybe I'll grab a piece of paper here if I can find one. See if I can find one. An example of what they give you when you do a 10-day wait at a gun store. Um, I'll show you this one. Let's see here. So you might have, here's an example. I'll show you an example. I'm going to cover up some private information here. But this is just an example of the kind of thing you get when you buy a gun. I'll show you. Ready? So you get the earliest delivery time down to the minute and second, the latest delivery time down to the minute and second. And you got to come back between that time. So if they shut that gun store down and you can't pick up the gun, is that a violation of your rights? How is that not an essential service? You guys following what I'm saying here? It's a political question. It's essentially political. It's not all legal. It's a political question whether guns are an essential service or not. Whether sending home somebody home with a tool that can save their life, is that essential? Why is gas essential and that's not? Why is buying a take to go muffin essential or to go decaf? And by the way, you can get decaf to go. Decaf, that's essential. That's essential. Yeah. Okay. Take a man cut his balls off. That's decaf. Okay. That's how crazy we are. I mean, we just kind of, people just go, oh, the government said it. Okay. That's exactly the situation that Lochner was in. The guy that sued New York, the guy that won. Maybe that's him right there. I guess that's Lochner's Bakery. It's exactly the same. They were trying to shut him down. They passed a law. You can only work 10 hours a week, 10 hours a day. He's like, well, it takes me 12 hours to make the bread that I sell my customers. So you making me hire I can't afford to hire somebody. I don't trust anybody else to do it because it's like basically right next to my house. And I mean, you're just intruding on people's lives to make a living. They're doing fine. They're making the bread. Just let them make the bread, for God's sake. Stay out of their business. Libertarians are loving me right now. They just love this. Yeah, typically libertarians know about Lochner because make a big deal of it. Republicans need to get on board with this stuff. They really need to learn about this stuff. Do you have a right to make a living? Yes, you do. It's called liberty. Does the government have a right just to arbitrarily have a meeting and say we're going to shut you down because some people might start coughing in a couple weeks, and then some people might need ventilators. We don't have enough ventilators, and it's just like, well, dude, this is my entire livelihood. What are you talking about? I got everything in this business. Yeah, and Joe over there is selling decaf coffee, and he gets to stay open. I mean, that makes no sense. Anyway, I hope you guys are getting this idea. I just started thinking about this a couple of days ago, and reminding me. I mean, I read Lochner versus New York like over 10 years ago. Let me see when I have it. I have the semester. Let's see. I got it. What do we got? Summer 2010. I had Professor Ullman. Hope this is making sense to you. Um, Mary Jane says it's essential to my safety. That's a civil right. Yeah. Do you have a right to be safe against criminals when the police are not there? The line at Turner's in Norwalk, when I drove by there, we went to Golf and Stuff, which was one of the filming locations of The Karate Kid. They had just closed when we got there. Okay, I can sort of understand Golf and Stuff. It's a little bit hard to keep that sanitary. I sort of understand that. It's arcades. Okay, you don't want the liability there. I got it. Maybe it's easier to shut that down. I don't know. But Turner's was open, and Turner's, everybody was packed in there like sardines to get ammo because you can't get ammo at Walmart reliably anymore, which is where people would normally go. So they go to Turner's. They spend more on ammo, and they're trying to buy guns. And you should see them. They were all basically all Hispanics, which is if you know Norwalk. And what other gun stores did I go to? Poway Weapons and Gear. I was there. They were open. Gunfighter Tactical. By the way, perhaps the best gun store in California, Gunfighter Tactical in Miramar. Turner's in Orange, Fowler's in Orange. They were packed. Um, the Army Navy store in Orange, which is one of the few Army surplus stores that still sells firearms. It's like a throwback from the 1960s. It's great. Um, a lot of these business owners are activists, and thank God, because we need them right now. We need to keep the economy going, people. People's lives are if you work for the government or you're a teacher or a professor or whatever, you might not even be thinking about this, but it's enormous pressure to run a business and to keep it going. And I think we need to ratchet up the scrutiny on the government. We need to have strict scrutiny here on the government, when it comes to liberty of contract, I think. And we need to be asking the hard questions of why this business and not that, but you're picking winners and losers here. And I just think that's a bad thing going forward. And we need to fight back. Civil disobedience. And if that bookstore was open, I would have gone in there and I would have bought some books as just a civil disobedience. I mean, if they were open in violation of the order, I would have gone in. So I don't know what you guys think. I know this is all highly controversial, but I did give a Democrat compliment today, and I even ripped a little bit on the Republican, Oliver Wendell Holmes. Although I did give Harlan a compliment. By the way, Harlan, Republican, the only dissent in Plessy versus Ferguson. All right, guys, take care. I'll see you later.
All right. That was Wednesday, March 18th, 2020 at 7:53 p.m. That was the first week of the lockdowns in 2020. Uh Man, wonderful reflection on this stuff. So we're gonna
Now,
leave it
now there's
we're gonna leave it there. Let's see. So we've done that. So the next one we have praying for the church the very next day. Take care. See you. See you.